I think everyone has the agenda. You know how we're proceeding today. Sam will, in a little bit, do an introduction of our DRPA speakers, but right now it's my privilege to introduce Kristen Scudder. She is the Freight Program Manager at the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. Most of you know that's the bi-state MPO for the Greater Philadelphia region. In this role, Kristen works closely with DVRPC member governments, local communities, and private sector industries to inform and advance transportation projects that support a safer, more efficient freight system that balances the needs of both people and goods movement. She also organizes DVRPC's Freight Advisory Committee, known as the Delaware Valley Goods Movement Task Force. So with that, Kristen, happy to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that introduction. Can you all see my full screen slides here?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for having me. Like Steve said, I'm Kristen Scudder. I'm the Freight Program Manager at DVRPC. And today I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share with you all a little bit about the Southern New Jersey freight rail market study that we've been working on. This study is being done jointly with NJDOT and DVRPC, and it actually kind of originated from a request that NJDOT had in a work program item for us. So it's a joint effort that we've been working on for the past year. Let me, advance my slides here. And it came out of multiple comments and maybe you could say concerns, I guess, that NJDOT was hearing around freight rail access in Southern New Jersey, mostly access being cited as a challenge to advancing and growing port market and a more robust industrial economy. So as many of you may or may not know, South Jersey Freight Rail is currently serviced and connected to the national network over the Delaware Secondary Branch and the Delaware Bridge that connects in Camden County. And this is the single point of access to the national network for freight rail in Southern Jersey. So this single point of access, as a result, has become a really critical component of the freight rail system. And so in hearing kind of these concerns around access, the study really came out of a desire to better understand what the needs might be for capacity enhancements, and what growth in capacity or enhancement might mean in terms of benefits to the entire region, not just New Jersey, but maybe also to the Pennsylvania side, since DVRPC is a bi-state agency. So for a little bit of context, I'd like to start by giving you all a little background on what we already know about freight rail in the region, what we've heard so far from stakeholder outreach and engagement. And I really hope to close by taking any questions, but also maybe asking you all a few questions if there is any input that you all would like to provide, and would certainly welcome the opportunity to follow up afterward as well, if anyone would like to provide more input, as we're still working on this. But our study area really involves these 7 counties that you see here. So a majority of the SNJDC region. And to use a little bit more of a diagram to explain this connection over the Delaware Bridge and lack of north-south connection that we currently have for freight rail in Jersey. This region used to have 3 former connections to other rail lines in northern New Jersey, and those have since either been abandoned, some removed, or some just not in use right now. So really, the market relies on the Delaware Bridge connection. And the concerns and access also come from not only a single point of connection, but also the fact that the Delaware Secondary on the Pennsylvania side of the river has a height restriction that prohibits double stack car movements via rail. So as it stands right now, movements coming out of southern New Jersey can't access the national network with double stack rail cars. So our outline for this study has really been to identify what the existing market activity is, hear from our stakeholders about what trends folks are either already seeing or expect could impact rail in the future, and what demand they also currently see for rail in the near future, and how that might support further economic development. We are also looking at, what are some of the proposed improvements that are already out there, and what are the benefits, challenges, and costs of various options. And then we'll be providing some guidance in our final report about different alternatives that can be taken in terms of investing in freight rail infrastructure going forward. So we started this process back in October with a steering committee, and we've spent a good part of the winter and early spring here reaching out to stakeholders, trying to identify what some of these known issues are, and are hoping to kind of have a follow-up steering committee meeting in May and put out a final report in June. So as it stands, we've wrapped up most of our outreach collection, but realized that we haven't talked to everyone. So again, if there's anyone on this call that we have not had a chance to speak with and you'd like to provide input, I would really appreciate hearing that and maybe taking a call after this as well. So a lot of kind of the background knowledge and existing conditions of freight rail in South Jersey have been documented extensively in a number of reports. Many of these coming from the state level and also some more focused studies, really ranging from the statewide freight plan, which was put out last year by NJDOT, and then some more localized freight plans done by SJTPO, and even more localized down to the port level with the Port of Salem corridor and freight rail study. So this is not the first look at rail in New Jersey, but there's a lot to build off here that's already been kind of considered and proposed in terms of maintenance and improvement perspectives. And most of these studies have identified intermodal connections as a really critical part of the freight rail network in the region. You can see on this map here a number of those intermodal facilities highlighted, and they range from port facilities to road transload facilities that have rail to truck movements as well. And we find that these are the major hubs that are moving a majority of the goods on the rail network, but not all of them. So good to understand that that these are major access points, if you will, to the network itself. In terms of the types of goods that are being moved right now on rail, you can see here both the inbound and outbound commodities to the region, with the outbound, major commodities being natural sands, natural gas and fossil fuel products, some agricultural products, and plastics and rubbers, with kind of a mix of other smaller movements. And then coming into the region on rail, we have a lot more variety, if you will, in kind of the other category, but some of the larger movements really including natural gas, fossil fuel products, agricultural products, and chemical products. So definitely a few industries that are more heavily utilizing rail than others. And while we've seen kind of this a continued trend of these types of materials being moved by rail, we've also seen a slight decrease in the past decade or so in rail traffic to the region. And I'll get into a little bit more some of the trends that we think have led to these decreased rail tonnage numbers. But even though we've seen kind of that decrease in rail traffic, the industrial sectors that really rely on freight movement, or what I would call freight intensive sectors, are still a major part of employment in South Jersey. So of these freight intensive sectors, They account for around 175,000 jobs in the counties that we're looking at. And roughly that contributes, I think about 25 to 30% of the state's jobs are in these sectors as well. When we look at where not only freight intensive, but specifically these rail served industries are in the map, they come in clusters. And like I mentioned earlier, we tend to see clusters around some of those intermodal connectors. But there are others scattered along some of the main rail lines in the area. And directly correlating to the tonnage of commodities that we see moving in the region, we see those industries as the main industries in some of these clusters. So chemicals, glass manufacturing, sand, food production, building materials, paper products, and then waste and scrap metal are some of the most heavily industries that are most heavily using the rail network today. So we took the opportunity to reach out to a lot of the rail line owners, operators, some of our port stakeholders, as well as businesses that utilize rail right now, or maybe have a desire to utilize rail in the future, and asked for their perspective on what trends they're seeing, and what they might see in the future. And these are a few that really stood out, and we heard across the board from multiple folks. So I'll go through a couple of these, but we heard a lot about the declining coal industry and refinery closures. When we looked at kind of the declining tonnage by rail and a couple slides earlier, we heavily suspect and know that a lot of that is due to these industry closures. So the last two coal-fired power plants in New Jersey, or power stations, sorry, were closed in 2022. And I think between 2010 and 2020, there were 4 refinery closures in the region, with PBF Energy in Paulsboro being the last open refinery. So this has led to some of those trends that we're seeing in rail traffic, and might be trends that we continue to see in the future. As for growing industries, the wind industry and the supporting industries around that are definitely growing in the region, as are warehouse and distribution centers. Wind energy and the supporting industries there have a lot of potential to use rail, whereas especially e-commerce, warehousing, and distribution has not been known for relying on rail, but we're seeing it become a larger portion of industrial development, industrial properties in the area. For other industries that are not currently present, we heard a couple of times about LNG by rail. I don't think that any of the stakeholders that we've spoken to felt that this was coming anytime soon, or that regulations were going to change, but has been part of the conversation in the past and something to watch out for in the future. And then general port competitiveness in the region. The wind port is growing. The region is known for its proximity to East Coast populations, making the port a really attractive point of contact for marine activity, and therefore potential opportunities for more rail usage. The general demand for passenger rail, I know we're talking a little bit later about the Camden-Glassboro line, but that can have impacts on the ability of freight rail to grow as well if passenger rail demand increases. And then lastly, general policy and regulations changes that might impact rail traffic in the future, including truck competitiveness, the speed at which trucks are able to deliver goods over rail, and the possibility for weight allowance increases for trucks that might make trucks more competitive for some of the heavier loads that rail currently moves. General push towards alternative fuels could change the transportation landscape, and then overall infrastructure investment could also be an opportunity as we're seeing a lot more investment and funds available for not only maintenance, but growth and access. So to sum that up a little bit more, the challenges that we heard through all of this were the height restrictions that are currently existing, especially on the Delaware branch, some weight capacity limits that, if expanded, might be able to provide greater rail access on already existing lines. Again, kind of going back to passenger usage, and if a growing demand for passenger rail could have impacts on the ability of a freight rail to run. And then generally also seeing that as warehousing grows, it takes more industrial land. Since they're not often utilizing rail, it might take space that could be used by rail-served industries as well. The general network configuration, again, single access to the national rail network, being kind of a single point of failure, if you will. And then the balance between Norfolk Southern and CSX ownership over as rail operators in this region, and potentially not wanting to invest in something that would also benefit their competitors. And then general access and maintenance costs. It's expensive to maintain and to upgrade rail, especially to add access or switches that would allow for new access to rail lines. And then road congestion, especially in more urban areas like Camden, that might make intermodal access less desirable. So I don't want to end on the challenges, while those were some that were identified and there were projects that we've heard of that can support maybe overcoming some of those challenges. We also heard a lot about opportunities for growth and for supporting the existing rail system and maintaining that. So again, some of those include available funding sources. The New Jersey Rail Freight Assistance Program was mentioned multiple times as a really successful program for rail maintenance and occasional expansion and growth. And the funding that was going into technical training, especially around the wind energy sector, really providing more jobs and growth to the region. We heard about expanded potential for service at port locations and at some existing manufacturers, as well as potential for growth in new sectors. And then we've already done a small analysis to identify some opportunities that could be available for potential diversion from current truck movements to rail movements. And most of those are in the same sectors that we already see a lot of rail movement occurring, and those include gravel, waste, metal scrap, and concrete. So I know that's a lot of me speaking, but kind of wanted to share a sense of what we're already hearing on the ground. And as we kind of wrap up our outreach and move more towards recommendations and investment options, would love to hear from this group. But to give you an idea of where we're hoping to frame a lot of this study, I think right now we really see three different investment focus areas that can be taken. And so projects can either support the preservation of the existing rail infrastructure that we have, can promote some of that volume and job growth that we're hearing opportunities available for. And lastly, investment could go towards building resiliency. So instead of a single access to a national network, what would additional resiliency look like for the rail network in South Jersey? So that will be coming more in our report, and we hope to share that with you all. But I kind of wanted to end asking this group a couple of the same questions. And I'm also happy to take any questions about the study and about the work that we've done so far. But wanted to pose to you all, are there industrial trends that you're seeing that I didn't mention on the previous slides? Are there projects or other ongoing planning efforts? Ben, I know you were mentioning some of the EDA's efforts to look at windport access, but are there others that we should be aware of and taking into consideration as we're making kind of the final approach for recommendations? Are there businesses that you are aware of that maybe don't have rail access right now, but might be interested? And if so, we'd love to talk with them and better understand maybe what would inspire that switch. And then is there anything that, any way that we can either frame or recommendations that could come out of this study that would benefit, this group or your stakeholders and constituents? So maybe I will pause here. I'm happy to answer any questions, but would also love to hear from anyone who would like to provide input.
Hey, Kristen, it's Ian Johnson with OmniTrax. How are you?
Hi, Ian.
First off, thank you for all this. It's extremely helpful. One thing I would add to bullet point number 1, I didn't see anything, and I may have missed it, around biofuels or sustainable aviation fuels. So we hear a lot from prospects about how South Jersey is uniquely located to take advantage of sustainable aviation fuels for the big airports up north. So that's probably one that makes sense to do a little more of a deep dive on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure that we've actually heard that much about that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Would that come through the ports or?
So my understanding is that you get, whether it's corn or ethanol or however you do, you inbound that by rail. You do the process to turn it into sustainable aviation fuel, and then you can either rail or truck it to destination, depending on how close to an airport you can get it. But proximity to an airport, while not being in an area that has issues with industrial, has always been a factor there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard a lot about kind of the prime access that this region has. So that makes a lot of sense to me, but I'll have to dig into it a little more. Is anybody currently building or looking at the processing facility that would do that conversion, or is this kind of a future opportunity that could be available?
I think it's more future forward. So there are a few companies that exist on the biofuel side, sustainable aviation fuel, which is like if you've flown United recently and you see Oscar the Grouch as their chief trash officer, it's like taking trash and converting it into jet fuel, basically. And that is in its infancy. So what you have right now is all of the major airlines have said, if you can actually scale the sustainable aviation fuel, we'll buy 100% of it. But you can't really find companies yet that have been able to scale what they're doing in their garage or what they're doing right in a very small facility right now. So definitely more future forward, but something to keep an eye on.
Sure. No, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Kristen. This is Sam Odie from Keller Engineers in New Jersey. I just wanted to thank you for providing our members from the Transportation and Aviation Committee such an informative presentation on the South Freight Rail study. In tying into your questions, I was kind of jotting down some things. There are some freight rail and truck studies that have been initiated by the southern counties and municipalities. Wondering if you were able to tie them into your study and if you're aware of them.
Yeah, well, we are aware of a few, so if we have missed any, I would love to hear that. But we've been working closely with SJTPO, who has been doing kind of that southern freight. What are they? It's a freight study for the region. It's a regional freight study.
Yep.
But they've been looking at both truck and rail access as a part of that. So they have been partners on our steering committee, and we've had multiple discussions with them. So a lot of the projects that we are identifying are similar and or the same projects that they have also identified through their outreach efforts. So we're not trying to recreate the wheel here.
Mhm.
They've done a lot of work already. And then maybe the second one that I think has played into this a lot has been the Salem Port Access Study that was done back in 2018. So
Okay.
a lot of great details there about opportunities, and some that that we know are already in the works in terms of upgrades that would provide that rail access back to Salem and keep
Okay.
the port active.
Yeah, one of the bigger truck studies that I was involved with at the early phase was in Camden County. Are you
Okay.
familiar with their truck study?
At the ports, yes.
Yeah.
They yes, sorry. So
Okay.
they also yes, we've been working with Camden County. They received a large MARAD grant to
Yes.
actually implement some of that
Exactly.
truck study work. So it's great to kind of see that already in the works and
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah, they had short-term improvements that they were able to advance, and then of course longer range planning initiatives that were part of the report.
I think that one in particular, kind of speaks to some of the concerns that we've heard around congestion and access, truck access to the ports, to rail sites. I'm not sure that they looked so much into rail access specifically as a part of that study, but I know that there was a lot of great community considerations in their truck work that they did.
Mhm. I want to continue facilitating any Q&A. I see Steve has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Kristen, for your presentation. I really have two questions for you. One of the most surprising things that I heard you talk about was that the Delaware Bridge across the river is like the single point of connection between South Jersey and really probably the rest of the country. I was unaware of that. Is that a problem for the movement of freight in South Jersey? So that's my first question. And the second question is if you could talk a little bit about the schedule for your study and what you think will happen next.
Sure, great question, Steve. So the Delaware Bridge is the single point of access for Southern New Jersey to the national system. I think there's a couple of different ways that you could look at what that means, especially in terms of resiliency and capacity. So from what we have heard so far, there have not been a lot of concerns around capacity. It sounds like the traffic that the rail system is seeing can be easily handled. There was a point in time in which South Jersey had a lot more rail traffic going on in the region, and it's well built for that. So generally, I think when we talk in terms of capacity, we've not heard a lot of concerns around that. When it comes to resiliency, I think that it can be a point of concern if you consider that losing access across that line and that bridge means that rail can't move in and out of Southern New Jersey. Other options for that movement could be truck movements. So resiliency could look like an emergency plan to move goods another way, or planning to have downtime and know that that could be a part of operations. We did see recently that when a truck struck the Delaware Branch Bridge on 95 a couple of weeks ago, that was this line that leads into the Delaware Bridge, and it was closed for, I want to say 2 or 3 days, rail traffic, if not up to a week. So it has happened. And, I think because that just happened, we're trying to follow up and see if we can get a little more information on if and what those impacts were. But I think it's a great example, knowing that, those types of closures have happened, and the industries are still running, right? So it would be a very large investment, a very expensive investment to add a second connection. And I think that it's not a decision that we are going to make as the MPO, but I think that needs to be weighed against all of the other options. So that's kind of where it stands right now.
Very good, thank you. And the schedule for your study?
Yes. So we are hoping to have a final report by the end of June of this year. So about 2.5 months at this point. We have a steering committee that's kind of, guided this process along. We're hoping to meet with them in the next couple of weeks, and then, we'll have, if not a final, at least a draft report available for comment at that point. So we're trying to wrap up outreach right now, but this is a great opportunity. I'm so grateful to be here and sharing this with this group today. We're still very open to input. So while we're in the process of closing things out, really want to make sure we've heard from everybody who wants to weigh in on access and activity in this market.
Very good. Well, thank you again, Kristen. Really appreciate you being with us. I think we have to move on to our second half of this afternoon. So I think, Sam, you're going to do the introductions for Mike and Nicole.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Thank you again, Kristen. Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce another one of our partners in the transportation industry, and true friends to the Southern New Jersey Development Council. The DRPA has always been very receptive to provide our members, with an update on their program, and also the Glassboro-Camden Light Rail. And we're pleased to have two speakers today, Mike Venuto, the Chief Engineer of the Delaware River Port Authority, and Dr. Nicole Ochroch. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. She's a Senior Engineer with the Delaware River Port Authority. So I will turn it over to the two of you, and I'll give you the floor.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Southern New Jersey Development Council, for the invitation to speak to the committee today. So it's been a while since we've presented the GCL project to this committee before, and it has been a while. So it was good to be able to come back and just give you some updates on the project. So Nicole's going to share her screen here.
Sorry,
shortly.
I accidentally exited out. So let me.
Yeah, no worries. So I'll keep going while you're setting it up.
Yeah.
So, yep. So Nicole's going to share her screen. So it's been a while, and we DRPA have been working on this project now for many years, as many of you know. We are DRPA. We are the project manager on behalf of New Jersey Transit, with the Southern SJTA as our funding partner for the project. So the three of us have been working on this together for years. So we continue to be excited about the project as we advance our preliminary engineering design. So we know the benefits that the GCO will bring to our region, and it'll continue to connect more people to the opportunities that they want, right? And that's what we do at the DRPA, is connect people to where they want to be. So I'll just add, so I didn't jump in with the comments portion, but if Kristen's still on here, I think I saw her for a second, but I could just add to what Kristen said. But I can appreciate the fact, what she said about the potential of the GCL impacting freight rail. And just to build upon what she was saying there, Conrail has been very clear from the beginning that they expect growth, and they also are counting on the current capacity they have. So I can tell you, because I personally have done it, spent countless hours with Conrail discussing their current operations, their current capacity, and their need for future rail expansion. And that's why we've spent so many hours and working so closely with Conrail as our partner, as to not to impede any capacity issues now or in the future. So Dr. Nicole Ochroch, the senior engineer here, she's been involved in this project for many years. She's been an excellent project manager for the DRPA, and she's going to just go through some background. I'm assuming a lot of people know the general background of it, but in case there's some others that don't, we'll provide some background for those that may not know our progress to date, and then we'll share the next steps with the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole. Thank you.
All right, you guys can see my screen, right? Perfect. Okay. So today we'll be talking about the GCL. So it is a 18-mile rail line between Camden and Glassboro in southern New Jersey. There will be 14 ADA accessible stations connecting through 11 communities. There will be 13 new stations, and then one will be at our terminal station at Walter Rand Transportation. And as Mike mentioned, we are restoring passenger rail service along the existing Conrail right-of-way. So as Mike said, this project has been around for a while. There was an alternatives analysis study completed in 2009. We completed the environmental impact statement in February of 2021, which led into this next phase, which is the preliminary engineering design. We kicked that off in October of 2022 with about a 3-year time frame. And then we'll move on to construction. So we're right now in that preliminary engineering design phase. And so here's just a brief overview of our track alignment. On the northern half of the alignment, there will be a dedicated track for Conrail and then one for the GCL. And then on the southern half, where there's less traffic, freight traffic, that is, there will be just one Conrail track that will be used at night. We're working very closely as part of this preliminary engineering design to get through all of the sort of requirements from both FRA as well as the Conrail requirements on track alignment and track centers and sort of all that nitty-gritty engineering stuff. So that's been very interesting and resulted in a lot of good conversation about how we're aligning and working with Conrail. So as part of this preliminary engineering design phase, we've been really delving into all the benefits that this passenger rail line will bring to southern New Jersey. Most notably, there'll be about 132,000 more people within a half mile that will have access to the GCL. It's really maximizing existing transit assets and improving all of those linkages between people, communities, jobs, activity centers along the alignment. I love this image. I think it's really powerful. So our GCL train will be 2 cars together and can accommodate up to 300 passengers. So if you sort of bring that out, that could be about 4.5 buses, so rounded to 5, or equivalent to 100 cars, assuming 3 people in each car. So you're just seeing how that translates to the other transportation modes and street congestion that we may have otherwise going on the GCL. We do get a lot of questions about safety. Obviously, safety is paramount to transportation to our GCL project. So we are working very closely with New Jersey DOT, who is in charge of all grade crossings in the state. So we are upgrading all of these existing crossings. I believe there's 42 existing crossings, and there'll be a few more added, but they will all have 4-quadrant gates. We are even working on how that intersects with the local sidewalks or even the bike lanes that would be in that area. This will allow those grade crossings in those communities to be part of a quiet zone if that is the direction that we want to move forward with. As part of our preliminary engineering design for the 10%, we upgraded all of our traffic analyses and traffic counts for the 10% design, upgraded from the EIS. So, this is obviously something that we're really cognizant of. In addition, we are looking at all of the pedestrian crossings along the alignment. There are a lot of unofficial crossings, I would say. So, we want to make sure that we are protecting the communities. We're understanding those flows of pedestrians. Where are they going? Why are they crossing? What is their proximity to important community facilities like schools, baseball fields, all that good stuff. So, we're really paying attention to that and continuing to figure out proper designs or at least parameters as part of the next phase of the project to really dive into and make sure that, we're doing our best to have a safe transit line. So as I mentioned, the GCL is a great opportunity to increase employment throughout South Jersey. It allows for more direct connection between different employment centers, academic institutions, medical facilities, and then, all of the other businesses along the alignment as well. It allows for more mobility between people or between locations as well, and just gives more options for folks that want to move between Glassboro and Camden, and then, from Camden over into Philadelphia. So briefly about our train type, we are continuing to evaluate all of the technologies out there for our vehicle. We do have one that we are designing to at the moment, but we're not committed to it. We are looking into other, more sustainable fuel types, zero emissions, battery operated. They're all continuing to be explored. We have a very unique alignment where we have to be freight compatible, obviously running alongside Conrail, so that just adds a little bit of complexity into the correct vehicle type that we eventually select. As I mentioned, I will be able to hold 300 passengers, and then everything will be low floor, able to be ADA accessible. And again, that real sticking point of being in a mixed use rail corridor. Our current operating service is 7 days a week. From 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. There are 15-minute headways, and then you see longer headways in the evening hours from 9 p.m. to midnight. That allows for that coordination with Conrail, and then Conrail, is operating midnight to 5 a.m. We, as Mike mentioned, there are certain pinch points along the alignment that will require coordination with Conrail, especially during the operations, and we're working with them so that when we get into operations, they're still able to run smoothly. All right, so our stations are located along the 18-mile alignment, every 1 to 2 miles. We have 2 types of station designs. I'll bring up some images right now. So we've got the center platform design, and then we also have the side platform design. And all of our stations will be ADA accessible, and just really trying to fit into the fabric of the community, whether, this is where we're talking about the different pedestrian routes, if there is parking available, how that fits in. So it's been a lot of sort of collaboration to optimize these station locations. Okay, so probably the slide that you guys are most interested in is our next steps. So this project has been going on for a while. We have partnered with New Jersey Transit and South Jersey Transportation Authority. SJTA is our funding partner. They have $200 million that currently funds our preliminary engineering design and program management office contract. We do have some additional funds we can use that for, utility relocations, coordination with Conrail, any other early construction works that we think are valuable and, an important next step to moving the project forward. So that has been a great sort of collaborative effort between the 3 agencies. In addition, we are working very closely with all of the municipalities along the alignment, especially through their municipality engineer or their utilities manager or, the county engineer to, have sort of tabletop discussions about the alignment and any possible conflicts that, the engineers from the municipalities may see, or, things like water mains or future projects that they know are coming up in their community that we should be aware of. So that's been a really positive experience from the preliminary engineering design side. In addition, we have a lot of state and federal stakeholders that we have been working with pretty closely. As I mentioned, New Jersey DOT, there's a lot of work that they are doing in Southern New Jersey as well. So we just want to make sure we're, sequencing our projects together, we're working together. New Jersey Turnpike also has a big project upcoming in South Jersey. So, we're staying connected with our partners there. And then, as I mentioned, the FRA has a pretty important piece of this alignment too. So they've also been involved. And then, depending on how things move, we'll be bringing in New Jersey state safety oversight to be part of our project. Besides our state and federal partners, we also have some pretty big partners, other stakeholders along the alignment. Rowan just, I think last week, presented their master plan. So, and some of the other municipalities have their own master plans. So, getting in front of those master plans, seeing how they intersect with our project has been important. There's a really large redevelopment effort here in Camden at Walter Rand, but it's not just Walter Rand. There's an expansion with Cooper. The DOT is doing some realignment of the streets. We've got Camden County also impacting here. So there is a really big effort across all of these stakeholders to make sure that we are, addressing all of these other projects and that there's synergy there between them. So we've been doing a lot of that coordination outreach. It's so important for the success of this project. And for everyone to be on board and, support all of our projects in this area to improve South Jersey. So as I mentioned, we have our preliminary engineering design team. They submitted their 10% design in October of 2023. We've subsequently gone out to some of the municipalities and shared those. And now we are aiming for the 30% design, which will be due this October, or, I would say late 2024. And from there, we still have some questions internally that we need to determine in order to finalize the documents into a design, build, operate, maintain contract, which is our expectation for this project. So then those contract documents that would then take the project from 30% through 100% and into construction and O&M. So that's where we are today. We have a really great communications team. So our website is updated pretty regularly. We have regular social media posts. I think they posted something yesterday. So, on Instagram, LinkedIn, we're pretty active. So, any questions, obviously you can ask us here, but you can also ask our questions through our website. We respond pretty readily. So that is our presentation. Thank you.
Mike and Kristen, thanks so much. This was a really informative presentation, lots of current information. We have a few minutes for questions, and I'm going to invite folks on the call here to join with any questions that they may have. But I'd like to kick it off with this first question. You mentioned Walter Rand and the development in downtown Camden. Are there any details that you can either share now or maybe in the coming weeks or months about what is planned right there at the Walter Rand Transportation Center? As you know, or probably know, New Jersey Transit is planning to completely demolish that facility. You've got the River Line tracks that run there, so just curious to know what the plans are there for bringing the GCL in. Will there be a second track? Will it operate on the River Line track? Where exactly is the terminus of the
Yes.
GCL? Those kinds of questions.
That is a great question, Steve. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have had a straight answer for you, but things are constantly evolving. So we have a few options, and I think and those options will come to light when we get that feedback from New Jersey Transit on their Walter Rand development, and also Cooper's development, because there's a lot of action going on. So we currently have 3 possibilities for how we will end by Walter Rand. From my understanding, New Jersey Transit should be putting out something on Walter Rand on their 10% concepts relatively soon. I thought it was the end of April, but it might, be out a little bit more. And I will say that the GCL team coordinates with Camden on a weekly basis, the big sort of coordinated group, and then our project manager works directly with the Walter Rand project manager also. So we are in constant communication about it, but there's a lot up in the air, I would say, and we just want to make sure that they fit together.
Okay, great. Randy or Ben, I'm not sure if you can see the chat messages, if are there any other questions in there?
Nothing at the moment, but folks feel free.
Okay, well then I'll take advantage and ask another question if I may.
Sure.
So I think most folks have been aware of this project for quite some time. There's certainly a large group of supporters for the project, but there's also a group of folks that aren't so sure or outright don't support the project. I know some agencies would be very concerned with public perception. They might even cancel a project if it didn't have public support. I'm curious to know how important is that to DRPA? And maybe you can talk a little bit about the things that you're doing to maybe try and mitigate some of those concerns, if that's even possible.
Sure. So as part of the EIS report, we had to go out and do public comments. As we're moving through the 10% design, there are a lot of updates, but it's hard to communicate the breadth of those updates to the communities in a public forum. So at the moment, we've been really just reaching out to the engineers in each of the municipalities to talk about conflicts and just as the project manager, our goal is to provide 30% documents that are safe and, are efficient, and that is our goal. And so we are working towards that goal. The public perception is hard. We haven't quite figured it out yet. We are about to embark on a little bit more stakeholder outreach, but we do put out material every 2 weeks, either on social media or on our website. So we are informing the public. It's just not as, obvious as a town hall meeting or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Steve, so I can add to, let me just add a little bit to that, to what Nicole said there. I mean, obviously the public perception is important to the project, but what we have found, we've been involved with this project since 2003, and what we have found over the years is just that, we continue to have support for the project. And yes, there's always going to be people who are not in favor of it, but we believe, based on the surveys we did back then and the information that we get now, that that we have an overwhelming majority that do support the project, right? They're not always out there as the most vocal, but we do have substantial amount of support for the project, and we believe that. We believe in the benefits, all the benefits that Nicole went through throughout that, and we believe in that the public sees that. So we are doing, as Nicole said, some outreach, and we're going to continue to do that throughout with the public officials and things like that. And eventually we'll be back out in public for bigger meetings, but we're focusing on getting that 30% design now and ironing out the details so we have much more to explain. But in the meantime, we're out there very actively on our website and social media to keep the public informed.
That's great. Thank you both for that response. Large transformational projects are difficult for technical reasons, political, and certainly public perception, but commend you both for persevering. I'm going to put out the last call for questions or comments here. Anyone?
I have one quick question, and maybe this is something we can also talk offline about, but since I asked about the interaction with freight rail, aside from the spacing and alignment within the right of way, were there any other challenges in planning for kind of interaction with the freight rail lines that are operating? Like where do these lines cross, and are there required signals and or challenges around that timing, if you will?
Yes, we are still working on some of those things. As part of our coordination with Conrail, we also have some sort of additional side projects improvements so that there is, a little bit of a buffer if they need it, in terms of like space on the track, and sort of working out some of the pain points. We only have one I can think of off of the top of my head that will require like an operational like signal change, but they have only one train that one train a day that goes in that one direction. So, it's just understanding their needs too, and like the reality of what the different trains are, what their movement is like. So a lot of that is still in progress.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Without getting into specific details of our negotiations with Conrail, they've been very clear from the beginning about their capacity and their current capacity. They've told us right from day one that they have all this future expansion growth and we cannot impede with that. So the goal from the beginning has always been to coexist along their right of way, right? And that's one reason why the EIS took so long, because we had to sit there with them and go over all the options, and as Nicole alluded to, there are some off-site projects that you won't see in the EIS that we're going to work with them to complete to preserve their capacity. Like on the map that you showed Pavonia Yard. Like there's some things there. We're going to lower a track bed in one area in case double stacking ever comes through. We're going to have our tracks separated to, even if they add a future track, still have 25-foot centers in most locations. So we're well aware of the impact that freight rail has on our community as well, and the importance of it. So again, from the beginning, we've always talked about, let's find the best way to coexist along this right of way so everybody can be successful. And that's what we're doing. And we're still have a lot of work to do with Conrail, no doubt. But we're continuing down the path.
Hey, Nicole and Mike, this is Tony Panzarino. Great presentation again. With Conrail, when you put out eventually the D-bomb, are you trying to separate that Conrail won't have any input during the D-bomb procurement, and they're going to have their own, and whatever you need to do will be done ahead of time, so that the D-bomb is only going to focus on the GCL line and not deal with Conrail or those improvements?
That's the plan.
Perfect. Okay, excellent.
Yep. We'd like to get those improvements out of the way so it doesn't impede on the GCL progress at all.
Excellent. Yep, that would be a good idea with Conrail.
All right, thanks, everyone. We are just about out of time. I just want to take a quick second here to mention two upcoming events. The 28th Annual Construction Forecast will be held at Stockton on Friday, June 7th from 8:30 to noon. And then also the Public Policy Speaker Series featuring NJDOT Acting Commissioner Fran O'Connor will take place at Rowan at the College of Business on Wednesday, July 17th from 12:30 to 2. So again, thank you, Kristen, Mike, Nicole, really appreciate your time and presenting to our Transportation and Aviation Committee. Thank you to Marlene, Randy, Ben, and the entire team at the Southern New Jersey Development Council for all the work you do behind the scenes that made today possible. So thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Great session. Thank
Yeah,
you.
have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.